Chosen one. Stop scrolling. You didn't land here by chance. This moment was orchestrated not by the algorithm, but by divine strategy. Heaven has drawn your spirit to this exact point in time because there's a truth that's been trying to break through all the noise in your life. You are marked. This mark isn't on your skin, but your spirit. It's not a label others can see. It's a signature that only the spirit realm recognizes. You've always known you were different. You didn't blend in with the world around you. Not because you were broken, not because you were rebellious, but because you were chosen. You felt it your whole life. A quiet sense of disconnection, a strange weight, a deep knowing that you were not made for the shallow. You didn't fit into their mold because you weren't built from the same blueprint. While others chase what fades, you've been drawn to what's eternal. That pull inside you, it's not your imagination. It's the effect of the mark that was placed on you before you ever entered this world. Some call it intuition, others call it sensitivity. But deep down, you've always known you are set apart. There's something about you the world couldn't understand. Some avoided you. Some were strangely drawn to you. Others resented you for no reason at all. That's not a coincidence. That's the power of the mark. It reveals truth. It exposes darkness. It stirs resistance. And yes, it protects. You've endured things most would have been crushed by. You've survived the silence, the rejection, the closed doors. But every tear, every battle, every lonely night wasn't wasted. It was training. Heaven was shaping you in secret for a future that won't look like the majority. Because you are not part of the 99%. The masses walk blind. They follow trends. They mimic noise. But you were made to carry light, and not just light, you carry fire. A consuming presence. A frequency that confronts the atmosphere around you. That's why demons recognize you before people do. That's why your peace disrupts chaos. That's why you've been under pressure, because what you carry is dangerous to darkness. The prophet Isaiah paints the image in chapter 62, verse 2. The nations will see your righteousness, and all kings your glory. You will be called by a new name, that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. Do you feel the weight of that? The new name, that's not rebranding. That's rebirth. That's divine recognition of what the world misnamed you. The mark of heaven gives you an identity that can't be stolen, forged, or diluted. You've wept over what others ignore. You've carried burdens no one saw. You've been the intercessor, the warrior, the quiet presence in the storm, and all of it, every moment, was heaven's way of shaping your back to carry the weight of glory. And now that mark is being activated. This is why you've felt the tension lately, the shift in the atmosphere around you. God is stirring the marked ones. No more hiding, no more shrinking, no more apologizing for your presence. It's time to walk in what you carry, because the hour is urgent, and heaven is mobilizing its remnant. You weren't built for approval. You were built for impact. You weren't designed to go with the flow. You were shaped to interrupt it. And every season that tried to bury you only confirmed what hell already knew. You're one of the few. This message isn't for the curious. It's not for the passive. This is for the ones who have walked through the fire and came out with scars that shine. You've been preserved, not because you're perfect, but because you're marked. And that mark is about to speak louder than ever before. If this message is confirmation of what your spirit has already known, Take a bold step right now. Type 144 in the comments. This isn't a gimmick. It's a prophetic act. That number represents the sealed, the set apart, the chosen remnant. When you type it, it becomes your yes. Your agreement with heaven that you know who you are and you refuse to go back to pretending you don't. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this assignment, because you're not alone. You're not misunderstood. You're not random. You're marked, and it's time to move accordingly. Everything changes now. The veil is lifting. The silence is breaking. Your name is being called, and the heavens are watching how you respond. There were moments you mistook being overlooked as being forgotten. Times you asked yourself, did God skip me? When in truth, He was hiding you. There is a kind of silence only the marked ones understand. It's not the silence of abandonment, but of protection. And if you're honest, you've lived in that space longer than you'd like to admit. You watched others be celebrated while you sat in the shadows. You saw doors swing open for people who didn't carry half the depth you did. You gave loyalty and received silence. You prayed in secret and heard nothing back. And yet, despite all that, your spirit remained awake. Not because things were easy, but because you were kept. There's a holy kind of hiding that happens to those with destiny. God didn't put you on pause to punish you. He concealed you to prepare you. Because visibility too soon can destroy a soul not yet rooted. Your isolation wasn't random. It was strategic. You weren't forgotten. You were preserved. When God marks someone, He often hides them from the very stages others covet. Because when your light eventually breaks forth, it won't be artificial. It won't be manipulated. It won't be something you fabricated with filters and applause. It will be glory pure, weighty, undeniable glory. You see, this world glorifies the visible, the loud, the immediate, but heaven works in shadows, in secret places, in hidden wells. You've been in a season where your name wasn't mentioned, but your name was being written, not in headlines, but in heaven's scrolls, not on platforms, but in promises, not in the mouths of crowds, but in the plans of God. It hurts to be hidden. It bruises something in you when you feel unseen. You want to explain yourself. You want to be understood. You want to scream, "Don't you see what I carry?" But heaven whispers instead, "I see it, and I'm not finished refining it yet." Oh, there is no shortcut to this process. You're not just being prepared to perform, you're being trained to carry. There is weight on your life, and weight requires capacity. You've walked through lonely places, not because you were cursed, but because you were called to walk a road that only the marked can walk. This road has no crowd, no map, no guaranteed applause, only a compass called obedience. You've learned the language of stillness. You've grown familiar with the ache of obedience. You've learned to stay faithful even when no one is watching. You've sown in droughts. You've worshipped while broken. You've stayed when walking away seemed easier. And heaven recorded every moment of it, not for vanity, but for vindication. What others call delay, God calls development. What felt like rejection was a redirection, not away from your destiny, but straight into it through the underground path. You've been growing in the dark, like a seed beneath the soil. No applause, no spotlight, just pressure. just roots, just patience. And here's the deeper truth. If they would have seen you then, they would have mishandled you. If you had been given the stage too soon, you would have performed instead of transformed. God was protecting you not only from them, but from a version of yourself not yet strong enough to survive your assignment. That is why the silence was long. That is why the waiting felt endless. Not because he wasn't moving, but because he was building you from the inside out. You're not a statue. You're a weapon. And weapons aren't made in public. They're forged in fire, tested in darkness, and drawn only in battle. We read in the book of Psalms, chapter 31, verse 20, "In the shelter of your presence, you hide them from all human intrigues. You keep them safe in your dwelling from accusing tongues." This is what it means to be hidden but not forsaken, to be overlooked by man but handpicked by God, to be wrapped in invisibility, not as punishment but as preparation. Because when God finally reveals what he's been working on in secret, no power in hell can deny it. The mark on your life required this kind of journey. Others may not understand why you had to take the long way, why you were denied shortcuts, why you suffered in silence. But deep down, you know, it's because what's on your life is not common. It's consecrated. You weren't delayed. You were being deepened. And now that deep work is nearly complete. You've questioned your sanity more than once. Not because you're weak, but because what you see and feel runs deeper than most can understand. You pick up on energies when no one else does. You walk into rooms and instantly sense the tension behind the smiles. You dream things before they happen. You feel people's pain before they ever speak. And the truth is, you've wondered if something's wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. Something is right with you. You're not crazy. You're called. The mark you carry comes with heightened sensitivity, emotionally, spiritually, atmospherically. You've always walked through life with a certain tension. You carry a radar that wasn't built for entertainment. It was built for discernment. And because of that, you've often felt like a misfit, too much for some, too deep for others, too intense for the superficial. They told you you were too sensitive. But sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a spiritual radar. You hear the unspoken. You feel the invisible. You catch the cues. Heaven whispers that others miss. That's not accidental. That's part of the mark. There are things you've discerned that you couldn't explain. Times when you felt the spiritual atmosphere shift, but didn't have the language for it. Moments when you couldn't stay in certain environments, not because you're antisocial, but because your spirit was reacting to something your mind hadn't caught up with yet. You were wired this way on purpose. Heaven marked you to notice what others dismiss, to feel the battle between light and darkness before it becomes visible. That's why spiritual warfare often surrounds you. You were designed to perceive, intercede, and disarm not just with words, but with your very presence. It's also why the enemy has tried to convince you that you're broken. If he can get you to mistrust your own discernment, he can silence one of heaven's most effective messengers, and that's you. You've lived with a weight few can carry. Because you don't just live in the natural, you walk in the spiritual. And while others laugh off the signs, you feel the urgency. That's not paranoia. That's the burden of the marked, even in your darkest moments. You knew there was something more going on behind the scenes. You knew certain battles weren't just emotional or circumstantial. You've seen it in people's eyes. You've heard it in their tone. You felt the heaviness of rooms no one dared to speak about. Your sensitivity is evidence of your spiritual assignment. Let me ask you this. How many times have you been drawn to someone just to find out they were silently drowning? How often have you known what to say without knowing why? That's not guesswork. That's the Spirit of God flowing through the vessel, he marked. You've been used by heaven, even when you didn't realize it. A single hug, a quiet word, a moment of stillness. You thought it was small, but the atmosphere shifted because you showed up with the presence of the King. You carry something holy, even in your silence. And yes, that's why the pain has been deeper. The betrayals have cut sharper. The emotions stronger. The tears more frequent. But that's because your spirit is awake. And when your spirit is alive in a sleeping world, it will feel like burden, but it's actually a gift. We find in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind." That sound mind is not dull. It's alert, anchored, discerned. It's the kind of mind that sees what others don't and stays grounded when others lose control. You don't just see surface-level problems, you see the root. You don't just survive storms, you interpret them. And if you've ever doubted it, if this section hits something you've never been able to explain, then comment this right now. I'm still sensing. Why that phrase? Because after everything you've endured, the spiritual fatigue, the emotional confusion, the pressure to numb yourself, you're still aware, still open, still spiritually alive. That's not weakness. That's evidence. The world tried to shut your gift down. Religion tried to shame it. Darkness tried to twist it. But you're still sensing, still discerning, still responding to heaven's frequency. When you write it, you're not just typing, you're testifying. You're saying to yourself and the realm around you, I still hear, I still feel, I still carry this mark, and I refuse to be silenced. End of 2. You may not realize it, but your very presence makes darkness nervous. Before you open your mouth, before you lift a finger, even before you pray, something about you begins to agitate the atmosphere. And it's not because of who you think you are. It's because of what's been placed on you. You carry a mark that cannot be duplicated. It doesn't come from titles, platforms, or the approval of people. It is spiritual. It's recognized not by popularity, but by authority. That mark is what causes unease in people who are hiding behind masks. It's why some can't look you in the eye. It's why others have left your life without explanation. The truth is, they were convicted by what you carried. You are marked in the spirit realm. Hell knows your name. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you carry something dangerous. You've been wondering why warfare seems to follow you, even when you're minding your own business. Why the attacks come in waves. Why you're hit in ways others are not. It's because your presence on earth is not neutral, it's disruptive. Even in your silence, you shift things. The way you walk, the way you observe, the way you carry peace into chaotic spaces. It's not normal. You weren't sent to simply adapt, you were sent to interrupt. And anything that interrupts darkness becomes a threat. Some of the battles you've faced weren't just about your past, they were about your potential. The enemy saw the fire before you did. That's why certain things were unleashed against you early. That's why childhood was hard. Why relationships collapsed. Why betrayal hit you when your guard was down? It wasn't because you were weak, it was because you were marked for impact. There's something in you that refuses to settle. Even when life seems quiet, your spirit is restless for more, not more possessions, but more meaning. You've been searching for what your soul already knows. You were made for divine conflict. You were born into a battle you didn't ask for but were designed to win. This is why you never quite fit in with shallow agendas. Why mediocrity chokes you. Why you can't stand environments with no vision. Because the mark on you is magnetic to purpose, and it cannot sit still in places that are void of spiritual weight. Your presence doesn't just walk into rooms, it announces something. It speaks without a sound. You carry an unspoken challenge to darkness, without rebuking a single spirit. Your light exposes them. You've been wondering why some people get defensive around you for no reason, why they suddenly shift, grow cold, or become hostile. It's because your spirit starts revealing what their flesh is trying to hide. That's what the mark does. It illuminates, it convicts, it awakens. And while others may fear that weight, you were born to carry it. That doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes you feel the pressure before you even understand where it's coming from. You enter a space and feel like you're in warfare, not conversation. That's not your imagination, it's your spirit picking up what's happening behind the scenes. You've probably had moments where you said, "What is wrong with me? Why do I feel everything so deeply?" But nothing is wrong. You're tuned to spiritual frequencies. You walk through life as a living disruption to what's been stagnant for too long. It's not about being loud or dramatic. Most marked ones are quiet, still, observant, but they're lethal in the spirit. Why? Because they don't speak unless it matters. And when they do, chains break. Minds shift. People tremble without knowing why. There are times when simply being near you brings healing. When people open up to you without understanding why. When children are drawn to your calm. When strangers feel seen in your presence. That's not personality. That's spiritual authority. And it cannot be bought, borrowed, or manufactured. It comes from the mark. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be authentic. Not everyone will celebrate you, and not everyone should. Some will reject you simply because their spirit recognizes what yours stands for, and that's okay. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be effective. We read in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verse 27. What is this? A new teaching and with authority. He even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him. That same authority flows through those God has marked, not because you earned it, but because he entrusted it to you. And now, more than ever, the world needs what you carry. The battle is real, but so is the weight on your life. And as long as you keep showing up with that mark intact, darkness will keep losing ground, whether you see it or not. Every betrayal, every delay, every door that slammed in your face, none of it was wasted. All of it was heaven's confirmation. You were never meant to fit in. You've been wondering why the path has felt so lonely. Why you always seem to be the one misunderstood, misused, or misrepresented. But here's the truth no one told you. Rejection is a signpost for the marked. Those who carry something uncommon will always be resisted by what's common. What hurt you was never meant to harm you. It was meant to hone you. The isolation, that was divine protection. The betrayal, divine redirection. The delay, divine preparation. And all of it was part of a deeper process. Heaven showing you that you don't belong in circles where the Spirit of God is not welcomed. You were not rejected because you lacked something. You were rejected because you carried too much. People around you felt the weight of the oil before you even understood what you had. That's why their actions didn't match their words. That's why they could be kind to others, but cold toward you. The spiritual pressure you carried was confronting their complacency, and still you loved. Still you stayed. Still you prayed when no one was praying for you. Still you served in silence. And for that, heaven has remembered you. Not because you did everything right, but because you refused to let your wound become your weapon. There are people right now who regret how they treated you. Not because they miss you, but because they now realize they mishandled someone marked. But don't let bitterness whisper its lies. You're not here to prove your worth to those who couldn't see it. You're here to walk in it, to become what they said you never could. Not out of spite, but out of obedience. You've tried explaining your calling to people who were never meant to understand it. That's why it backfired. That's why they laughed. The mark on you was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be revealed in power, and that season of revealing is coming. They thought they left you behind, but heaven was setting you apart. They thought you were done, but God was just getting started. They thought they buried you, but they didn't know you were seed. And seeds don't die in the dark. Seeds grow in the dark. God has been growing you while they were counting you out. Every silent season, He was watering you. Every ignored gift, He was refining you. Every forgotten prayer, He was storing it up. And now you're reaching the surface. You are rising not for revenge, but for rain. Not for applause, but for assignment. Because when God marks someone, He never forgets them, even when man does. Scripture says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 15, "Although you have been forsaken and hated, with no one traveling through, I will make you the everlasting pride and the joy of all generations." No, yes, that's you, the one they passed over, the one they overlooked. God says, "I will make you the joy of generations." You see, there's a shift happening. Your name is being whispered in rooms your feet haven't entered yet. What once was closed is being reopened, not because you fought for it, but because you were faithful through it. The rejection you experienced was not random. It was sacred. It was the final test before the crown. And now that your time is approaching, don't return to the old. Don't dilute your voice to re-enter circles God pulled you out of. Don't revisit what God redeemed you from just to prove a point. You've been upgraded. And upgrades don't belong in old software. If you've ever felt like this message has been reading your life, like it's pulled language from places you haven't spoken out loud, then maybe you were meant to hear this right now. Maybe this is your confirmation that everything you thought disqualified you was actually your divine qualifier. And if you've been strengthened, lifted, or seen by what you're hearing, I'll ask you something simple, like share and subscribe. Not for numbers, not for ego, but so this message can reach others who are still sitting in silence, thinking they're forgotten, the same way it just found you. And if you feel led, you can now support this mission directly. Every offering, big or small, helps push these prophetic words further, helps deliver them to those whose faith is hanging by a thread, helps keep this message loud in a world that prefers silence. You can find the link below when you're ready. No pressure, just obedience. Because this isn't about content. This is about calling. You're not just here to receive this word. You're here because you are this word in motion. You are the living proof that rejection cannot cancel purpose. You are the evidence that what was thrown away by man can still be crowned by God. And the crown is closer than you think. They sense it on you, even when they can't explain it. Before you speak, before you move, something in the room shifts. There's a weight to your presence. You've seen it in people's eyes. The double take, the confusion, the curiosity, the discomfort. They don't know what they're feeling, but you do. It's not charisma. It's not attitude. It's the mark. You've been walking through life wondering why people project onto you emotions that don't belong to you. Why some are drawn like magnets while others recoil as if exposed. Why your very existence seems to make some people insecure, agitated, or overly intrigued. It's spiritual. The mark you carry disturbs what's dormant and exposes what's been hidden. Sometimes, people are not reacting to you. They're reacting to the oil. The mark of God on your life doesn't ask for permission. It announces itself. It calls forth deep things in others: conviction, fear, hunger, or rejection. Some don't even understand why they dislike you. Their spirit recognizes what their mind refuses to admit. You carry something from another realm. You were marked to move in rooms that would choke the average soul. That's why your presence feels heavy to those not ready for change. You don't even have to speak correction. Your silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, people confront their own compromise. There is nothing ordinary about you. And deep down, you've always known it. That's why shallowness drains you. That's why gossip makes you uncomfortable. That's why fake spiritual talk turns your stomach. Because your spirit recognizes counterfeit. And the mark on your life won't let you settle for sugar-coated truth. Even when you tried to blend in, dim your voice, mute your vision, filter your fire, it didn't work. You still stood out. Not because you wanted to be seen, but because heaven refused to let you go unseen. You were born to carry presence, and presence cannot be hidden for long. The Word of God declares in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 15, "For we are to God the pleasing aroma of Christ among those who are being saved and those who are perishing." That's exactly what your life is. A spiritual aroma, invisible, but undeniable. Some are drawn to it. Others are disturbed by it. But either way, no one can ignore it. Your walk with God releases something into the air. A scent of glory that either comforts or convicts, depending on the condition of the heart it reaches. And it hasn't been easy. Carrying this weight has cost you comfort. You've lost friends not because you changed, but because your calling revealed their complacency. You've walked alone, misunderstood. You've sat in rooms where your presence became the unspoken threat. All you did was show up, and suddenly, hidden darkness had to come into the light. But don't shrink. Don't soften what God made sharp. Don't apologize for the clarity you carry. The world is full of fog right now. Heaven needs those who can cut through it. You carry clarity. You carry contrast. You carry the kind of light that draws those hungry for more and repels those who want to stay numb. And that's not a curse. That's proof of your assignment. So the next time you notice the awkward tension, the strange glances, or the silent exits, don't question yourself. Recognize the moment. Something in the atmosphere is recognizing your mark. They're not rejecting you. They're wrestling with the glory you've been assigned to walk in. And whether they acknowledge it or not, that mark on your life is doing its work. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to explain yourself. The anointing does the talking. The Spirit does the drawing. You just need to keep walking in obedience. Because while some are offended by your presence, others are healed by it. Some avoid your truth, but others are awakened by it. There are people alive right now walking miracles because you obeyed the nudge to show up, to speak up, to pray, to stay. You didn't get this mark by accident. You were trusted with it. And now, more than ever, the world needs marked ones to walk boldly, speak clearly, and love deeply without compromise. So if you know this is you, if something inside you has been burning while reading this, take a moment to mark this moment. Comment the number 441 right now. Not because it's a trend, but because it's a sign, a declaration, a moment of agreement. It tells the spirit realm, I know who I am. I know what I carry, and I choose to walk in it unapologetically. Learn, because this is not the season to blend in. This is the season to burn bright, to carry the fragrance of heaven everywhere you go without needing a title, a microphone, or permission. You are the aroma. You are the contrast. You are the signal that change has entered the room. You've probably wondered why your life has felt more like a wilderness than a platform. Why, every time you seemed close to breakthrough, something shifted and pulled you back into isolation. Why doors opened just long enough for you to see the light and then slammed shut without warning. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't punishment. It was training. God trains the marked ones in silence, not in classrooms, not in crowds, but in caves. You weren't being punished when you were passed over. You were being refined. The ones with the greatest assignments often go through the longest seasons of obscurity, while others were being promoted in public. You were being processed in private, and while you cried out for answers, heaven was building in you something that applause could never produce: depth. This kind of depth doesn't come from books or conferences. It comes from fire, from wilderness, from learning to hear God in the absence of noise. The silence you hated was actually sacred. It taught you to recognize His voice without needing confirmation. It trained your spirit to respond without delay. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 105, verse 19, until the time came to fulfill His dreams. The Lord tested Joseph's character. No, that's what He's been doing with you. Testing, refining, burning away what couldn't go with you into the next season. You don't realize how many battles you've already survived just by staying in position. You didn't quit. Even when you felt invisible, you didn't curse the darkness. Even when the silence broke you, you stayed. You waited. You listened. And that made you dangerous. Because the ones trained in silence emerge with precision. They don't speak unless heaven has spoken. They don't move unless the Spirit says move. And when they do move, darkness feels it. What God has been building in you away from the spotlight will soon make sense. But for now, understand this: heaven doesn't waste wilderness. He doesn't leave His chosen ones in silence to punish them. He does it to build a voice that carries weight. Do you remember those nights when you stared at the ceiling, wondering if your prayers were hitting brick walls? The moments when you wanted to scream but couldn't find words? Those were not wasted moments. Those were training hours. God was stripping away your dependence on emotions, validation, even understanding. He was teaching you to trust Him in the dark. It's in the wilderness that idols fall, that self-importance dies, that performance is burned out. Because when you have nothing left to offer but obedience, then, and only then, can the weight of your anointing fall. You see, God doesn't trust weight to the untested. If it came easy, it wouldn't last. If you stepped into your calling before you were broken, you'd confuse gifting for glory. But He broke you gently, quietly, in places no one else could see. So when He lifts you up, there's no pride to pull you down. That's why this silence had to last so long. That's why the stretching was so intense. God wasn't just preparing you for a moment, He was preparing you for sustainability. Anyone can rise quickly, but only the trained ones can stay. You don't just carry talent, you carry oil, and oil doesn't come without crushing. That crushing is why your smile has sadness behind it. It's why your eyes look older than your age. It's why people are drawn to your wisdom, even when you never signed up to be a teacher. They sense it, even if they don't know what it is. It's the weight of someone who's been through the fire and chose not to come out empty-handed. Every hidden season added something to you that the public could never give. It gave you roots, gave you discernment, gave you an ear to hear what others ignore. You didn't just survive the silence, you were shaped by it. So if you feel like you're still in the cave, still in the quiet, still in the place of being unseen, don't despise it. Heaven does its best work in silence. When God builds a prophet, a reformer, a deliverer, He does it out of sight. The wilderness is not the end. It's the proving ground. One day soon, the very things you learned in the silence will be the words that deliver nations. But right now, the most important thing is that you don't rush the process. You've come too far. Heaven has invested too much. And when God brings you out of this quiet season, you won't just echo what others are saying. You'll speak what He has burned into your bones. You've endured more than most people know. On the outside, you've learned to carry yourself with strength. You smile when you want to cry. You speak life to others while quietly wondering if you'll ever taste it yourself. But what they don't see is that your strength wasn't chosen, it was assigned. You've been carrying weight that wasn't meant to break you, but to build you. There's a reason why your life hasn't followed the easy path. Why shortcuts never worked for you. Why doors that opened for others slammed shut in your face. It's because you were never called to live a casual, convenu life. You were built for something heavier, something eternal. And those who are called to carry what you carry must be forged, not simply formed. You've gone through fires that weren't about punishment. They were about preparation. Because what you carry must be refined not only for your sake, but for the people connected to your destiny. You weren't just chosen for victory. You were chosen to be a vessel. And vessels of glory aren't made of glass. They're made of stone, fire-tested and pressure-shaped. That's why you've experienced crushing weight in seasons others barely noticed. God wasn't trying to break you. He was building your capacity. And here's something few understand. When God gives you greater capacity, He doesn't start with blessings. He starts with burden. It's the burden that makes you aware of the need. It's the burden that gives you eyes to see what others walk past. It's the burden that forces you to kneel, not because you're weak, but because you were never meant to carry this weight alone. You've probably noticed that you don't bounce back like others do. When you get hit, it runs deeper. When you grieve, it lingers longer. When you discern, it disrupts everything. That's not because something's wrong with you. It's because your sensitivity is connected to your assignment. You weren't made for surface-level living. You've always felt things too deeply to pretend. You've always known there was something sacred about your life, even when you couldn't explain it. You've been drawn to the lonely places, not because you like pain, but because that's where you hear God clearest. The wilderness has become your school, and suffering has become your teacher. There's a depth in you now that didn't come from a sermon or a song. It came from surviving seasons that threatened to silence you. It came from midnight tears that watered the roots of your calling. It came from carrying others when no one carried you. And whether or not the world acknowledges it, heaven sees it all. God is not looking for shallow vessels. He's not looking for polished perfection. He's looking for people with depth. People who don't flinch when the battle intensifies. People who know how to carry weight without complaining. People who have been crushed, but still praise. People like you, we see in the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 2. These are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word. All, that's what he's found in you. Not pride, not performance, but reverence. A heart that still trembles when he speaks. A soul that doesn't treat his voice casually. That's why the pressure increased. It was never meant to crush your faith, but to prove it. You've been asking God to remove the weight, but sometimes the answer isn't lighter load, it's stronger shoulders. And that's exactly what he's giving you. Not to punish, but to entrust. He's been enlarging your internal frame so that what used to break you can now build others through you. Because when you emerge from this season, you won't just carry your own victory, you'll carry deliverance for others. You'll walk into rooms and the atmosphere will shift. Not because of your words, but because of your history with God. You'll speak with a voice that only comes from surviving the fire. A voice that hell respects. You may feel weary now. You may feel stretched, pressed, even poured out. But don't misread the process. What's happening in you is holy. This kind of weight doesn't last forever. It gives way to glory. You weren't called to live light. You were called to live deep. And what's forming in the deep places now will speak loudly in the days to come. Not everyone will understand it. They're not supposed to. This path isn't for the many, it's for the marked. And you're still standing. That alone is proof you were born to carry this. You've been walking with a quiet strength no one fully understands. The kind of strength that isn't loud or showy, but steady, still, unshaken. You've learned how to endure storms with a worshipping heart. You've learned how to keep walking with unanswered prayers in one hand and unwavering faith in the other. And that kind of strength, it doesn't come from you. It comes from the mark. The mark doesn't always manifest in miracles. Sometimes it looks like not quitting. Sometimes it looks like forgiving without apology. Sometimes it looks like waking up one more day, even when you cried yourself to sleep the night before. That is the power of endurance, and you've been carrying it without recognition, without applause, and without reward. But heaven sees it. The strength you carry is not the kind you flex. It's the kind you live. It's forged in silence, tested in pressure, and proven in obedience. And that kind of strength terrifies darkness because it can't be manipulated. It can't be distracted. It can't be bought. You've had moments where you thought, I'm not strong enough for this. But somehow, You still showed up. You still served. You still believed. And that's not weakness, it's evidence. You're stronger than you think. Not because you never bend, but because you refuse to break. Some days, strength looked like holding your tongue. Others, it looked like walking away. Sometimes it looked like praying through bitterness you didn't even want to let go of. But in all of it, you've grown stronger, wiser, mightier. You're not who you used to be, and you didn't get here by accident. Every battle added something to you. Every trial trained your hands for war. Every heartbreak taught your spirit how to stand without answers. You don't just have faith, you have scars that still praise. You have wounds that still worship. There's a resilience in you now that can't be faked. It's in your eyes. It's in your voice. It's in the way you speak with authority. Even when your heart is still healing, you don't wait to be whole to be useful. You show up anyway. That's what makes you dangerous to the enemy. You refuse to sit down in the dark. You don't need a spotlight to walk in purpose. You don't need a crowd to walk in fire. The truth is, your strength was born in the places where no one clapped, where no one affirmed you, where you kept going because God said so, even when everything in you wanted to stop. There's a weight on your life that's only increasing. You may not see the fruit yet, but your roots have gone deep, and in the spirit, that matters more than anyone will ever know. You've built endurance, not the kind that burns fast and fizzles out, but the kind that lasts, that stands, that remains. We find in the book of Romans, chapter 5, verses 3 to 4, we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. You've been walking this process for longer than most could handle, and now, perseverance is a part of your identity. Character has become your covering, hope, your anchor. You're not surviving, you're becoming. You're becoming someone who refuses to die in transition, someone who won't be defined by delay, someone who can hold vision in one hand and patience in the other without breaking. And if every word in this section has been echoing what you've lived quietly, if this feels like your soul just got interpreted, then I want you to say something simple right now. Comment, I remain standing. Me. Why? Because that phrase is a spiritual decree. You're not just saying it for today, you're saying it for every day. You didn't collapse under the weight. You're saying it for every night you stayed up crying. Every moment you felt forgotten. Every attack you endured without clapping back. It's not about being perfect, it's about still being present. That comment is your reminder, your marker. It's your moment to say, I've been hit, but not knocked out. I've been stretched, but not snapped. I've been overlooked, but not overthrown. You remain standing because you were never standing alone. And that's what the enemy fears most, not the ones who never get touched, but the ones who keep rising anyway. Because every time you rise, you remind hell that heaven still has the final word. Every time you stand, you prophesy to your future. You silence every lie. You confirm the mark. This isn't just survival, it's legacy. You were built to last. This is not just a message. It's a prophetic interruption. Something eternal is reaching into your temporary. Heaven is pressing pause on everything else around you to speak directly to what's been stirring beneath the surface for months, maybe even years. You've felt it, haven't you? The tension between your current reality and your deeper identity. The frustration of knowing you were created for more, but not seeing it manifest yet. The pressure of feeling something rising in your spirit that doesn't match the season you're standing in. That's not coincidence. That's the activation of the mark. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when heaven shifts from preparation to release, not because you're fully ready, but because the time has come. And for you, that moment is no longer far off. You can feel the atmosphere around you changing. You're more restless than you've ever been, but also more focused, more aware, more attuned to what really matters. That's the sign of spiritual activation. You're not waiting for a calling, you're waking into it. The dreams that won't leave you alone, the deep convictions that won't fade, the random moments where tears fall for no reason except that your spirit is responding to something unseen. This is it, the divine tension before the release. It's not emotional hype, it's spiritual pull. The mark on your life is no longer dormant. It's vibrating, stirring, moving toward alignment with heaven's timeline. The delay wasn't denial, it was divine timing. And when heaven says now, no power in hell can delay what's already been decreed. The word of the Lord says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 22, the least of you will become 1,000, the smallest, a mighty nation. I am the Lord. In its time, I will do this swiftly. That time is closer than you think. What felt like smallness is about to be magnified. What felt like insignificance is about to carry great weight. And it won't happen gradually. When heaven moves, it moves suddenly. Don't ignore this moment. The enemy would love for you to scroll past and numb yourself with noise. But the Spirit of God is calling you to lean in, to recognize that this isn't just encouragement, it's instruction. Heaven isn't trying to inspire you. It's trying to ignite you. Because the world doesn't need more distracted voices. It needs marked ones, those who know how to recognize divine timing and move with authority. And that's why this message found you. Not to remind you what you've lost, but to reawaken what's still inside you. Your fire isn't gone. It's just been buried under battles. But today, the wind of the Spirit is breathing on your embers again. The smoke rising inside you is proof. The flame is still alive. You are still called, still marked, still chosen, still needed. And yes, it's okay to feel unqualified. Most chosen honest though. It's not about how ready you feel. It's about how aligned your surrender is. God doesn't anoint the perfect. He anoints the available. So don't sit this one out. Let this message become a turning point. Let it mark the moment where you stopped waiting for perfect conditions and started responding to prophetic clarity. Heaven is giving you clearance. The fog is lifting. The fire is returning. And if this word has confirmed something in you, if it stirred something you didn't even have language for until now, then respond to it. Don't just hear it and forget it. Let it seal something in your spirit. If you've been moved, stirred, or deeply seen by what you've just heard, I want to ask something simple but sacred, like this message, so it rises in visibility and reaches more marked ones still wandering. Share it with someone you know carries weight but may be stuck in waiting. Subscribe to stay connected, because you're not meant to walk this alone. And if the Lord leads you, you can now support this work directly. Every gift, big or small, pushes these prophetic messages further into the places they're most needed, places algorithms can't reach. But the Spirit can. You'll find the giving link below. No pressure, only if your spirit bears witness. Because what you're hearing isn't just for today, it's for the days ahead. This is the season where the marked rise, the hidden step forward, the weary find strength, the silent ones find their voice. And you are not too late. You have not missed it. You are right on time. Everything you've survived up until this moment has prepared you for this release. And now that it's here, don't delay. Don't retreat. Don't doubt the deposit in your spirit. The season is shifting. The mantle is descending. The oil is fresh. And your name is being called in heaven's roll call of the rising remnant. Let this be your moment to say, I recognize the call and I receive it fully. There's a reason the battle intensified, just as you were drawing closer to clarity. Every time you got near the edge of breakthrough, something came to shake you, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. It wasn't random. The pressure increased because the promise was approaching. You need to understand this. Warfare surrounds what carries weight. The enemy doesn't fight empty vessels. He doesn't spend time on people with no threat. His resistance is a backhanded confirmation that you're carrying something from heaven that hell dreads. That's why you've been surrounded, not because you're weak, but because you're marked. This isn't just about opposition, it's about timing. When heaven gets ready to release something through you, hell gets ready to resist it. But here's what the enemy always underestimates. Those who are marked may get hit, but they don't back down. They dig deeper. They burn brighter. They grow stronger under pressure. And you've done exactly that. You've kept walking through what was designed to cripple you. You've learned how to worship while wounded, how to move forward without answers, how to cry and still believe. And whether or not you realize it, that's what spiritual maturity looks like. Not the absence of struggle, but the refusal to surrender to it. You've discovered strength you didn't know you had. You've learned that faith isn't a feeling, it's a decision. A daily, yes, akiwe, relentless refusal to quit. And now you carry authority that can't be taught, only earned through fire. Authority isn't in volume, it's in endurance. It's in obedience. It's in scars that still shine. And you have that. You walk into rooms and change the atmosphere, not because of what you say, but because of what you've survived. You carry a testimony that hell couldn't silence. And that alone makes you a threat. It's not just the battle you fought, it's how you fought it. With integrity, with humility, with the kind of quiet perseverance that shakes kingdoms. You didn't slander. You didn't scheme. You didn't compromise. You stood your ground when it would have been easier to fall in line. That's the sign of someone who's been tested and found faithful. But you need to hear this. Your warfare hasn't just been about resistance, it's been about transfer. Heaven is preparing to place something in your hands. And before God trusts you with authority, He tests you in adversity. He watches how you steward the unseen before He releases the visible, and you've passed tests no one even knew you were taking. We read a principle of this in the first book of Peter, chapter 5, verse 10. And the God of all grace, who called you to His eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will Himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. And yes, after the suffering, there is restoration. After the battle, there is elevation. And it doesn't come through striving, it comes through staying faithful. You didn't miss your moment. It's being multiplied. The attacks didn't cancel your calling. They confirmed it. What you thought was a detour was actually the construction zone of your mantle. God has been adding weight to your voice, depth to your prayers, power to your presence. Because when He brings you into the next space, it won't be for observation, it will be for activation. You won't enter as a spectator. You'll enter as a solution. The fire didn't weaken you, it welded you. You are one with your calling now. It's not something you do. It's who you've become. And people will recognize it without you having to explain. They'll feel it when you speak. They'll sense it in your stillness. You'll carry impact without effort. Because you've been formed in the fire. You may have lost things along the way, people. Time. Opportunities. But you haven't lost your oil. And that oil is going to speak louder than any resume. It's going to open doors that were never supposed to open. Not because you manipulated them, but because heaven has ordained them. And when those doors open, you won't walk through them wounded. You'll walk through them wise, not trying to prove anything, just ready to pour everything, because you've been through too much to play small now. Too many nights of wrestling, too many mornings of choosing faith over fear. You didn't fight to get back to normal, you fought to get back to purpose. The warfare didn't destroy you, it delivered you. The enemy tried to bury you, but he didn't know you were seed. And now, what was buried is about to break forth with power. Because when a marked one survives the fire, they don't just return. They return with fire in their eyes, oil on their hands, and revival in their steps. You've been standing on the edge of something you can't explain. You've felt it in your spirit, like a holy pressure building in the unseen. You can't describe it in words, but your soul recognizes it. Something is shifting, and deep down, you know, this is not the end. This is a birthing season. What you've been carrying in the secret place is starting to press against the borders of your current life. It's not frustration, it's spiritual contraction. The mark on your life is not content to stay buried anymore. It's demanding expression. The dreams, the words, the vision, heaven is pressing them through you. That's why everything lately has felt so uncomfortable. Not because you're failing, but because you're full of prophecy, full of fire, full of divine instruction that cannot remain inside forever. Heaven is not asking you to perform, it's asking you to release. And the longer you delay, the heavier it feels, not because you're disobedient, but because you're overdue. When a season of release collides with a heart that's been refined, something powerful happens. The marked one becomes the messenger. You were never meant to just carry oil. You were meant to pour it. And that means the fear, the insecurity, the perfectionism, it has to break now. The voice of delay must be silenced. The temptation to wait for better timing, more clarity, more confidence, it ends here. You don't need more time. You need more trust. Because what you've been given wasn't meant to stay hidden. Even the waiting had a purpose. But now, you're no longer just a student of pain. You're a steward of glory. The wilderness taught you how to hear, but this season will teach you how to release. We read in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 9. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. Go. This is your moment to speak what heaven has burned into you, to release what's been growing in silence, to birth what's been maturing in your midnight tears. You weren't just being broken, you were being made ready. And the world doesn't need more information. It needs anointed release. It needs words forged in fire. stories that come with scars, visions carried through valleys. And that's exactly what you've been called to bring. You've been entrusted with more than revelation. You've been entrusted with evidence. What you lived through was not for you alone. It was for those you're called to deliver. There are people waiting on the other side of your release, people who won't move until you speak. You don't need a microphone to activate purpose. You just need obedience. You don't need to go viral. You just need to go vertical. The moment you release what's inside, heaven takes responsibility for the impact. You've been asking God when it will be your time. But here's the truth. Your time isn't coming. It's already begun. The contractions you feel are not delays, they're signals. It's time to push, to speak, to write, to build, to step. No more excuses. No more retreating. No more waiting for permission that heaven already gave you. If this message feels like a mirror to what you've been sensing, don't ignore it. This is more than inspiration. This is a divine summons. You were marked to deliver something eternal, and now it's time. So, right now, mark this moment. Comment the number 828. Why 828? Because it represents a birthing code, a prophetic symbol that something is coming forth. A declaration that what's inside you will not die in delay. It is your yes in numeric form. It tells the atmosphere, I'm ready to release. I'm done waiting. I agree with heaven. Don't underestimate what a simple act of response can do in the spirit. It's not about comments, it's about confirmation. When you comment 828, you're placing your spirit in alignment. You're saying, this is my time. I won't miscarry the mantle. I will deliver what God placed inside me. Hello, this isn't just about purpose. It's about obedience. And obedience in this season is the key that opens the floodgates. You've carried this long enough. Now it's time to let it come forth, not perfectly, but faithfully. The world needs what you've been holding. Don't rob them of what only you can release. So rise up. Messenger, speak up. Chosen one, what's inside you is holy, and it's ready. You've been misunderstood, not because you're confused, but because your frequency is different. People don't always know how to process what they sense in you, so they dismiss it, label it, resist it. But the tension you've felt with others is not personal. It's spiritual recognition. The mark on your life unsettles those who are not aligned with it. Some are drawn to you, not because you're charming or persuasive, but because your spirit carries answers their minds can't articulate. Others are repelled not because you've harmed them, but because your very presence exposes their stagnation. That's what happens when you carry truth before its time. You've likely noticed it. How people confide in you without understanding why. How strangers are moved by your silence more than some are by a sermon. How certain environments become heavy when you enter, not because of pride, but because of presence. You carry something weighty, and weight changes pressure. The spiritual world recognizes rank long before people do. That's why you've been opposed in places you were sent to help. Why you've been rejected from rooms you were called to reform. Why your kindness was mistaken for weakness, and your quietness mistaken for inexperience. You're not behind. You're just operating ahead of schedule. God often gives the marked one a voice that doesn't fit the current atmosphere because it's not meant to echo it. It's meant to shift it. But that shift comes with loneliness. You've felt it deeply, the ache of being surrounded, yet unseen, needed, but not understood, celebrated for what you carry, but rarely cared for as a person. That's the unspoken pain of many chosen ones, being spiritually recognized but emotionally neglected. And yet, you keep showing up. You keep pouring. Keep praying. Keep helping others find answers. You're still waiting for yourself, not because you're invincible, but because you're marked with compassion. You feel deeply. You sense atmospheres. You carry the weight of people who don't even realize you've been interceding for them in silence. And while that burden has often made you want to withdraw, here's the truth. It's proof of maturity. You've grown beyond needing constant validation. You've learned to lean into God when the crowd goes quiet. You've stopped looking for confirmation from those who can't carry your revelation. And now, God is preparing to surround you with people who speak your language. People who don't just see your gift, but honor your journey. People who carry similar scars. People who won't be intimidated by your fire or try to tame your authenticity. A tribe that doesn't compete but complements, that doesn't measure but multiplies. You've outgrown shallow spaces, and heaven is responding to your growth with new alignment. The misfits, the exiles, the ones who had to learn to walk alone for years are being brought together, not in cliques or crowds, but in covenant-level connections. People who sharpen without shaming, correct without crushing, cover without controlling. It's part of the shift you've been sensing. The old circles couldn't carry the next mantle. The old patterns couldn't protect the next level. That's why relationships faded. Why conversations stopped. Why you no longer fit where you once felt comfortable. You're not being abandoned, you're being reassigned. There's no bitterness in this season, only clarity. You're not angry. You're awake. You're not offended. You're focused. And because you've chosen to guard your heart instead of closing it, God can now trust you with people who carry his heart too. We find in the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 20, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Oh, your wisdom is shifting your company. And that's not pride, it's alignment. Because where you're going requires voices that don't water you down, spaces that don't ask you to dim, environments that honor your oil instead of exploiting it. You've carried people long enough who were never meant to walk the next stretch with you. And letting go is not dishonor, it's obedience. This is your clarifying season, where distractions are peeled away, where familiar places no longer fit, where who you are becoming begins to outweigh who you used to be. And in that tension, heaven is refining your relationships. Don't fear the separation. It's sacred. God is not just building you, he's building your surroundings. Not for comfort, but for destiny. Not for popularity, but for purpose. And soon, you'll look around and realize you're no longer the only intercessor in the room, no longer the only one who discerns what's beneath the surface. You're walking with those who carry weight like you do. You've wandered long enough. Welcome to the beginning of divine alignment. There's something different about how you walk now, not in your step, but in your spirit. You carry the stillness of someone who's wrestled with God in the dark and didn't let go. You've fought battles not visible to the human eye, wars within your mind. Your soul, your identity. And while others saw your survival, heaven saw your surrender. That surrender wasn't weakness. It was the door to power. You see, God doesn't entrust glory to those who only want influence. He entrusts it to those who have proven they can carry pain without poisoning others, to those who walk through fire and come out gentler, not harder. You are one of those. Your warfare gave birth to wisdom. You don't react the way you used to. You don't defend yourself the way you once did. Why? Because you're not trying to be understood by those who were never assigned to understand you. You've stopped wasting breath in places that don't recognize oil. And in that silence, you've grown. Deeply, dangerously, quietly. The mark on your life has matured. You're not just a vessel. You're becoming a voice, a carrier of fire that won't flicker when winds of resistance blow. That's what happens when God finishes a refining season. He transfers weight. And right now, you are standing in the tension between who you were and who you were always meant to be. You don't even need the full picture anymore. What you've endured has taught you to obey without details, to step without a map, to build even when you've never seen it done before. That's the kind of faith that moves heaven and shakes hell. And while others may still be debating whether you're qualified, God already handed you the tools. This next stretch is not about being seen, it's about being effective. You're done performing, done trying to fit in, done explaining why you see what you see and feel what you feel. You're stepping into a season where your life becomes the sermon. Your stillness becomes a threat. Your obedience becomes a message louder than any platform. We read in the second book of Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 7, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us." That's what's happening in you right now. The treasure is pushing against the clay. What's inside of you is too weighty to remain hidden, too holy to be silenced. You've been entrusted with evidence of eternity, and it shows. Even when you don't try. There's a posture God is forming in you now, one that doesn't panic under pressure, one that doesn't need to prove anything, one that simply carries, stands, releases. And because you've laid down the need for recognition, heaven is increasing your reach. But it won't look like you expected. It won't always be stages. It won't always be praise. Sometimes it will look like one conversation that shifts a generation, one act of obedience that opens a floodgate, one whisper in the spirit that undoes years of spiritual oppression. You weren't called to be impressive. You were called to be effective. There's no more striving in this season, just sinking with the Spirit. You're done apologizing for the weight you carry, for the silence you keep, for the purity you protect. People may not understand why you pull back, why you pray longer, why you ask deeper questions, but that's okay. You're not walking according to trend, you're walking according to divine pattern. You no longer serve reaction. You serve revelation. That's why you can't just do what everyone else is doing. Why you don't have peace-copying systems that work for others. You're not being rebellious, you're being set apart. Marked ones are often misread until their season of release. But you've grown past the need to be explained. You've become comfortable being misunderstood by man. As long as you remain known by God. And He knows. He sees. He confirms. The wilderness wasn't wasted. The silence wasn't failure. It was the molding of a soul who could be trusted not to touch the glory. Someone who would carry power without abusing it. Truth without arrogance. Fire without pride. You are no longer being formed. You are being released. And when you step forward from this point, you won't need to ask for doors. You'll become the door. You won't need to ask for platforms. Your very presence will shift the atmosphere. That's what happens when you carry not just gifting but evidence. You've been through the crushing. You've endured the fire. Now the oil will flow, and it will not run dry. You didn't ask to be chosen, but you answered anyway. You didn't sign up for the crushing, the wilderness, the rejection, but you didn't walk away either. And that choice, over and over again, is what has separated you from the 99%. You are not just called, you are trusted. And that trust is what qualifies you in heaven's eyes, not popularity, not credentials, not applause, just key, stubborn, relentless obedience. You've obeyed when it was lonely. You've obeyed when it made no sense. You've obeyed even when it cost you almost everything. That's the sound. Heaven responds to the sound of yes. But now your yes is opening something. You've crossed a line in the spirit. And everything you've been carrying, everything you've been refining in silence, is about to emerge. You're not waiting for permission anymore. You're walking in prophetic rhythm. You're not trying to get in the room anymore. You've become the voice that shifts the room, and the enemy feels it. That's why the warfare increased, why the confusion came, why you've been second-guessing your clarity in moments when you should feel most confident. Because hell always tries to break what heaven is about to broadcast. You're not just being elevated, you're being entrusted with influence. And influence doesn't begin with crowds. It begins with conviction. You've already been living the message. Now it's time to release it. We read in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." That's what this moment is really about. Not spotlight, but light. Not platform, but presence. Not fame, but fruit. And your life, just as it is, has already begun to reflect something far greater than yourself. But don't stay silent now. The fire that's been rekindled inside of you isn't just for your personal comfort, it's for public release. Your testimony matters. Your voice matters. Your obedience matters. There are people on the verge of collapse who need the sound coming out of your story. So, if this message has spoken to you, really spoken, take a moment right now, like this message, not for algorithm's sake, but as a declaration. I receive this in my spirit. Share it with someone you know is carrying oil, but sitting in silence. Comment below and say something that aligns with this word. Maybe it's a phrase. Maybe it's a name. Maybe it's a prayer. Let your response be a form of spiritual activation. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Stay connected. This space wasn't built for hype, it was built for the marked. You're not meant to walk this alone. If the Lord moves your heart to support this prophetic stream, you'll find giving links below. No pressure, only participation as the Spirit leads. Every seed fuels the flow. Every gift pushes this message beyond borders, beyond barriers, beyond what social reach can accomplish. You're not just sowing into words, you're sowing into reformation, because that's what this is. Not just another message, but a movement, a call to the quiet ones, a reawakening for the ones who nearly gave up, a trumpet for the hidden ones like you who are stepping into visibility not for glory, but for God. The people who once overlooked you will begin to listen. The ones who couldn't understand you will begin to ask questions. And the words you release, whether whispered in private or declared in public, will not return void. You've become dangerous to darkness now. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. You've seen too much to doubt. You've walked too far to retreat. And you've yielded too long to stay quiet now. Your silence carried weight. But now your voice will carry authority. You're not coming with answers. You're coming with presence. The next time they encounter you, they won't recognize the version they remember. Because God didn't just restore you, He remade you. Rebuilt you with steel in your spine and oil in your hands. You're not walking back into old spaces as a survivor. You're returning as a torchbearer. This is your emergence season. The mark is no longer hidden. The light can no longer be muted. And you, chosen one, can no longer shrink. So speak, move, shine, and let the world see what heaven has been shaping in secret. You're no longer just carrying the fire. You are the fire. There's a silence that only the marked understand, the silence between promise and fulfillment, the space where heaven has spoken, but earth has yet to respond. It's a holy tension, a quiet wilderness, and you've been walking in it longer than most know. It's the space where visions seem distant, yet won't let go, where you've obeyed without visible reward, where you've sown seeds in tears and watched others reap harvests you were promised. It's where discouragement knocks loudest, but faith whispers deeper truths, and you've chosen to listen to the whisper. That choice matters more than you think, because while the crowd celebrates miracles, heaven watches consistency, and you've been consistent in hidden places. You've served faithfully when no one noticed, prayed for others while waiting on your own answers, praised through heartbreak, gave even when you were in need. That kind of faith doesn't make headlines, but it moves heaven. This season hasn't been about visibility. It's been about establishment. You've been rooted, stabilized, stripped of distractions, grounded not in emotions, but in truth. And while others may be chasing platforms, God's been building a foundation in you that won't collapse when the shaking comes. Because yes, shaking is coming, but those who have been marked and matured in the silence will not be moved by it. You've already survived private storms. You've already overcome inner earthquakes. What's coming won't destroy you, it will reveal you. This is what many don't understand. The wilderness doesn't delay your calling, it defines it. It doesn't take from you, it forms what can't be taken. And in you, something has been forged, something holy, something costly, something that can't be imitated by charisma or copied by ambition. You've been given what only comes from endurance. Wait. We see this in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 4. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. That's exactly what has been happening behind the scenes. Perseverance has been finishing its work. You are not where you used to be, not just physically, but spiritually. You think differently. You discern faster. You speak less, but with more power. You don't chase every open door. You wait for right alignment. There's a wisdom in your waiting now, a power in your stillness. You've stopped trying to make things happen and started flowing with what heaven is doing. That is maturity. That is kingdom posture. And while some may assume nothing is happening around you, they have no idea what's being built within you. You've been carrying vision in the womb of your spirit. The world sees stillness, but heaven says gestation. And when the time comes, what's birthed through you will not need validation. It will carry undeniable evidence. That's what you've been marked for. Not noise, but impact. Not trends, but transformation. You are not here to impress. You are here to disrupt cycles, dismantle darkness, and release kingdom strategy into environments that were once controlled by fear. And none of it came easy. You've bled for this clarity. You've wept for this posture. You've fasted for this authority. You've carried the weight of obedience when delay made it feel like a mistake. But now, the ground beneath you is firm. You know who you are. Not because someone told you, but because the silence taught you, the pressing revealed it, the isolation purified it. And now, even in moments of doubt, you no longer reach for man's confirmation. You stand anchored in the identity that came through refinement. You are no longer negotiating your obedience. You are no longer diluting your assignment to be more palatable. The urgency in you has surpassed the fear in you, and that shift has changed everything. Now, when you walk into a room, you don't wonder if you're enough. You know you're sent. You don't try to read the atmosphere. You sate it. You don't wait for permission to speak. You speak when God stirs. And that's enough. This is the fruit of the season. No one celebrated the quiet forging of a spirit that won't flinch under pressure. And as you move forward, remember this. There's a difference between being ready and being released. And the silence wasn't heaven ignoring you. It was heaven arming you for the very thing you're about to walk into. The next time people see you, they won't understand what changed. They'll just feel the shift. They'll feel the settledness, the fire that doesn't rage, but burns with focus, the wisdom that doesn't shout, but silencieusement. That's what the mark has become in you, a still fire. And that fire is what darkness fears most. You've reached a point in your journey where the question is no longer, am I chosen? The evidence is overwhelming. The trials didn't destroy you. The silence didn't shake you. The delays didn't dissolve your hope. And the weight you carry can no longer be hidden. What's inside you now bears the unmistakable signature of heaven. But now comes the sobering truth. The mark wasn't just given to elevate you. It was given to assign you. You weren't chosen to sit in revelation. You were chosen to move in it. You weren't marked just to shine. You were marked to pierce darkness. And that means you're entering a season where the cost will increase. Not because God wants to punish you, but because He's entrusting you with more, greater clarity, greater fire, greater responsibility. This is where many pull back, where they feel the tremble of what they've asked for and begin to second-guess the calling. But not you. You've walked through too much to retreat now. You've died to too many versions of yourself to resurrect fear again. This is not the season of questioning. It is the season of execution. Heaven is calling the marked to build, to plant, to speak, to go. No more rehearsing the promise. No more looking for signs. The signs have already come in your scars, in your survival, in your awakening. You know who you are. You know who sent you. And because of that, your next steps won't be dictated by comfort, applause, or convenience. They'll be dictated by assignment. That's what happens when identity matures. You move different. You speak only when it matters. You stay quiet when you're baited. You carry presence into rooms and shift dynamics without ever demanding attention. You become the kind of person who breaks chains just by showing up. That's not arrogance. That's anointing refined in fire. And while others may still be clinging to titles, you've already laid yours down. You're not obsessed with being called something, you're obsessed with being obedient. You're not asking for visibility, you're asking for accuracy. You've learned that fruit is louder than branding, that silence is more powerful than noise, that the Spirit moves most through vessels that have been emptied of self. And you've been emptied, not just once, but over and over again, until there was nothing left but a yielded yes. And that yes is what heaven is building on now. We find in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16, verse 10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. You've proven yourself in the little, in private battles, in silent service, in hidden obedience, and now the much is being released not for status, but for stewardship. There's a new boldness coming on you, not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that moves with prophetic certainty, the kind that recognizes false peace and breaks it with truth, the kind that doesn't flinch when called to confront darkness, not out of pride, but out of purpose. And with that boldness comes responsibility. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will celebrate you. Some will misread your fire as threat. Others will call your stillness arrogance. But that's not your burden. Your only assignment is to stay in step with the Spirit, because this is not about you anymore. It's about the ones assigned to your voice, the ones trapped in cycles you were once delivered from, the ones who will only be unlocked when you walk in full obedience. This is bigger than fear, bigger than preference, bigger than reputation. The mark on your life carries a generational ripple, and your yes will set it in motion. Don't shrink. Don't explain away your fire. Don't sanitize your sound to make others more comfortable. You weren't made for comfort. You were made for consecration. You're no longer asking for the mantle. You're wearing it. You're no longer praying for open doors. You are the door through which heaven is moving. And when you step into dark places now, you don't just bring light, you bring order. That's what the wilderness prepared you for. That's what the crushing revealed. That's what the silence confirmed. You're no longer searching. You're sent. So, walk forward without apology. Move with weight. Speak with fire. Love with clarity. Serve with power. And never forget, this wasn't a random journey. It was a carefully orchestrated awakening. You were hidden, then humbled, then handed a sword. Now it's time to use it. You've come to the end of this message. But the real journey is just beginning. If something in your spirit has been stirred, if you felt seen in a way that no algorithm could ever engineer, then this was not just a video. This was a divine appointment. You're not like the rest. And deep down, you've always known it. The battles you've fought, the weight you've carried, the whispers you've obeyed in the dark, none of it was wasted. It was God marking you, shaping you, and now activating you. And if this word was confirmation, don't keep it to yourself. Like this message as a prophetic agreement, a quiet yet powerful way to say, I receive what was spoken. Share this with someone who's been carrying weight in silence, someone who needs to be reminded that they're not overlooked. They're marked. Comment below. Just one phrase, one sentence, one sound from your spirit, whether it's I'm ready, I receive the mark, or something uniquely your own. Your words are not for attention, but for activation. And if you haven't already, subscribe. This isn't just content, it's a stream, a space for the called, the marked, the misunderstood. Stay connected. There's more coming for you, if you feel led. You can also sow into this work. Your support helps carry these messages beyond limits, into phones, hearts, nations. There's no pressure, only obedience. You'll find giving info below if your spirit bears witness. Because this isn't the end. This is the moment everything starts moving in alignment. The oil is flowing. The wind is behind you. You are marked. You are ready. And now, you are being released.